Sweaty Sweatano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Sunny Day in Glasgow record, See When Absent. You know, these days there's a lot of boring shoegaze and dream pop out there. Underground bands that are carelessly churning out needlessly boring songs that do nothing but hide behind the most lazily generated wall of distortion or reverb. These walls of sound are not really living up to the mastery of groups like My Bloody Valentine and Slow Dive and Cocteau Twins, Galaxy 500. There are some newer groups who I happen to love as well, like Beach House and The Radio Department. But these other new groups that I don't really care for, I feel like they're not really smearing their songs in beautiful, mind-expanding studio trickery like a lot of these greats do. Instead, they're just trying to obscure a lack of interesting song ideas. A Sunny Day in Glasgow, though, I've never considered them to be one of these groups, but I have been a little on the fence with them over the years. The band's name itself seems to kind of stand in the shadow of the heritage of the music they pull from so strongly, noise pop and twee pop and shoegaze. And their first couple of records, even though they are rife with sonic experiments, they're a little too disjointed and harebrained to really catch on beyond a few singles or tracks that were hot on the blogosphere in the early days of the music blogosphere in like the late 2000s. However, in 2010, the band dropped a record that totally went through my radar, and it just so happened to be maybe their most concise and accessible record yet. And this newer record of theirs, to me, kind of goes back to the raw experimentation of their debut, of their sophomore record, but also incorporates these more straightforward pop appeals. This record is catchy, this record is sweet, and yet it is also wildly psychedelic, adventurous, and kind of dense. There are some tracks on this LP that do come off pretty straightforward though, songs like CRUSHIN, a lazy little love ballad of a song with booming drums and watery guitars and synthesizers. The song is simultaneously heavy, but light, airy, and fluffy. And the song The Body Bends has some of the most intelligible vocals on the entire record, really raw, upfront, strong, bold, confident delivery in this singing. I love it. And the blissful explosion of guitars on the chorus of this track makes for one of the most beautiful moments on this album. Oh God, it's nice. And A Sunny Day in Glasgow still manages to sound sweet as they deliver some of the weirdest sonic experiments I've heard on a pop record this year, like the very warm but suffocating distortion on the song Bye Bye Big Ocean, which features all these off-kilter drum beats and bouncy, echoey lead vocals swimming through this sea of distortion. Or the really weird shouting on the refrain of the song In Love with Useless, which every time this voice shouts, there's this screaming pitch echoing from behind it, but as soon as the voice stops, the noise stops. It's like the voice is coming from Pandora's box, and in order to hear every word, you need to open and close the box each time, simultaneously letting out the lead vocal and screams from hell. And there is a killer pop song underneath all of the psychedelic mess of this song. I also love the blissful, buzzing guitar solos on the back end of this track. This song just melts beautifully, all the sounds together. This record in general is really just a beautiful melt of sounds. There's Oh I'm a Wrecker, which has some of the weirdest vocal edits on the entire album, or Golden Wave, which sounds like something Panda Bear would have co-produced with Grimes, but they didn't really get along that well, so they were frustrated the whole time and they were trying to get through it real fast. I sort of mean that in an interesting way, but the really weird, attention-grabbing, chipmunked vocals hanging in the background of this track are kind of obnoxious. And that's the thing with some of these tracks and some of these experiments. They do sort of tend to overstay their welcome here and there, mostly if there's not really that great of a song hanging in the background, like The Things They Do to Me, or the song Never Nothing, which is an incredibly drab tune and a really uneventful instrumental to back it up. But a lot of these songs feeling long isn't necessarily a bad thing. I feel like A Sunny Day in Glasgow really goes the mile with some of these tracks. These could have simply been 1, 2, or 3 minute songs, but a lot of the time these guys are stretching these tracks out to 4 or 5 minutes, which in the grand scheme of popular music isn't that long, but there's just something about these tracks that just makes them feel longer than they actually are. It's like, yeah, they're poppy, they're catchy, but they also feel like a bit of a drone, a soundscape. When I'm listening to some of these tracks, some of the best tracks on this LP, time kind of stops or slows down a little bit, which I think is a pretty intriguing effect for any album to have, really. For the most part, I do like this album. I think it's a really great noise pop shoegaze record. I think it's one of the most creative in terms of sonic experimentation in a while, barring the new My Bloody Valentine record. With some of these songs being as long and as multifaceted as they are, not all of the various parts of these tracks mesh together really well, especially on some of the songs that have intended sloppiness in the instrumentation that kind of leaves a sour taste in my ears. But on the whole, I think the band pulled together a really creative, interesting, sweet, fun, colorful tracks that I can really dive into the sound play of. I'm feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 on this thing. Transition, if you've given this thing a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Oh, my eyes itchy. A Sunny Day in Glasgow. Forever.